and welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we are breaking toxic relationship cycles in the Black community. Today's guest is Mrs. Hawanya Miller, a licensed marriage and family therapist. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much, Connie, for bringing me on board today.
Absolutely. It's so pleasant to have such wise and amazing therapists with us. So I just wanted to thank you, and I want to let our audience know a little bit about you. Is that okay?
Sure.
Awesome. So Hawanya has over 10 years of experience serving individuals and couples. She seeks to assist people in enriching their lives with meaningful, loving, and compassionate relationships. She utilizes Gottman and emotion-focused therapy tools to orient her clients into finding solutions and tools that work. In the past 2 years, she has collectively engaged in identity, relationships, social justice, and overall wellness challenges. She has expanded her services to include providing therapy to address diversity, racial ethnic trauma, international expat concerns, cultural conflicts, and identity development. Wow, that is awesome. Yeah, so you've come from a lot of different backgrounds, but you have many interests. Why don't you just fill in the gaps?
Sure.
Let's start from here. How can we start?
Let's start with I think collectively we all were in this matrix when we had the lockdown of COVID.
Yes, great.
But because we were locked inside, we were able to witness a little bit more things from videos. And the murder of George Floyd, along with many other things during that summer, really opened people's eyes and their ears, their minds, and their spirit around who am I, and then how am I dealing with everything that comes with being who I am. And at the time, I was living in Japan because I've lived and worked abroad for over 5 years, serving the U.S. military, but also those expats who serve the military in those countries, and realized that, again, what I'm trained to do, what I've always had a calling to do, is very much needed in this space. And
Absolutely.
I'm trained and called to recognize systems. I'm a person who does not have the privilege of not seeing me being a multi-identified person. I identify as someone who's originated from the continent. My people are enslaved in the U.S. I'm a woman. I happen to be a little bit voluptuous, and that's another identity people don't want to talk about.
Don't talk about it.
A bunch of things.
Yeah.
I'm also highly intelligent. That's another thing that tends to happen. I'm a proud Southern belle.
I love.
But all those identities comes with systems that just have created different types of conflict, struggles, and things. And in that year of 2020, I think more people realized that the way people see me and the way I see myself, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I need some help, and I want to talk to somebody about it. Boom, here I am. I'm ready to talk to you about it.
Thank you.
But I know I'm trained to really honor all these systems that you've been involved in, and also the systems that you choose to be involved in. And not everybody thinks in systems. Not everybody sees systems. Not everybody acknowledges those. That's what I'm going to do. But the other part is I'm also willing to confront the BS that has come from all that warfare that people have been in. And for many people, either they're on a spectrum. Either they're ready to call up arms and be like, we got to overthrow everybody. Or a lot of people were really like, oh, sweet Lord, I got to get involved. And I need to go through a rebirth process, because this has been a lot. This has been multiple years, generations in the making, and I don't know if I can continue to make it. The interesting part about this is living in another country and seeing this on television. I'm also in a country where they're having their own type of reckoning in that space as well, because of their own things are changing in their country. The looks of people are changing. People are intermarrying. You're asking more immigrants to come. Your ideas of even being community versus individual is changing. Sexuality is changing. And now they're just trying to make sense of that. And those folks also want help. But help and talking with someone and doing therapy has very much been a westernized thing, very much been a colonized point of view, because somebody decided they wanted to explore some things, and then they sit there and made some systems and some words and some diagnoses and then ways of treating it. But ironically, the idea of sitting and conversing, communing, meditating, and seeking guidance has been there since the beginning of time. In Africa, when we sat there and we sat in a temple, if we sat with nature, when we sat with an elder, when we sat and communed with ourselves, that has been there. It's just been described differently. But the westernized stuff that we're doing is very much desired in a lot of places in the world. But they also want to make sure that you're not leaving out these different boxes that they're checking, different identities, different cultural beliefs. They just want to blend it. They don't want the Western stuff to take over, which tends to happen when you look at psychology. It tends to want to take over things, tell you how to be. And I'm with the people of, you already know who you are. You're still fine tuning it. I just want to give you some other stuff to consider, to challenge, to maybe even broaden the definition. And I'm very much in a space where I really, really, really are wanting and desiring and have been working with people, particularly people who are melanated, to really work through that. Because to be melanated in spaces is a lot of hard work, and it can be very painful, be much of a struggle. And you're not alone, but you need to have a safe space to make sense of it. So that's who I am and where I am and where I started.
You said a word. You said a word, and I want to commend you for that, because as a fellow therapist who's gone through my own adversity, and there's no better time to actually kind of combine the two, because it reinforces what you were saying. I want to say it's hard to be the only one standing up in the room, you know, because there's not a lot of, I don't think I've met a single, this is 90 something show that I've done. I have not met a single therapist who's talking about what you're talking about. Okay. So I just want to commend you for that. And thank you for your passion. God, you touched on so many things. One of the things that I really want to kind of just re-emphasize with what you said is, yes, we want this Western way, because when we look on the news and we look on the media, and we seem so great and so lavish and so awesome, you know, like to know English and to be with all the rap artists and the, you know, the media and Hollywood, you know, all that's great. But there's this cultural piece, this sense of identity, this sense of connection that, you know, the people want to keep, you know, and it's hard to get that fine line. And when you think about, because we have, one of the things that we have that makes it appealing is the money, you know, like, let's just be real. And so, anyway, I just think that it's a thin line to be able to meet these people where they are with our Western mindset, give them what they need without telling them what they need, without forcing them.
Sure.
And in a nutshell, it's you just said what happened to me in my case, like 110%. Like, I could see what the clients needed. Like, I'm a therapist. I'm trained to see systems. I'm trained to see patterns. I'm trained to see what the overall dynamic is. But there's this ruler over me that I have to answer to. They're the ones with the power. They're the ones that I have to answer to. And I have to make a decision with respect to which way am I going to go. So how do you do that? Like, how do you balance that between giving the client really what they need, but then coming from this space and this perspective and these resources that at times there could be a conflict?
This is great because this comes up often. Growing up in America, the way I look requires me to code switch. And we, from those who are from the diaspora in America, we say that often. Other places, I find that they have different words that have also culturally existed. So I lived of all my years abroad, I was mainly in Japan.
Okay.
Saving face.
I'm just curious, how many Black folks are in Japan? Like, how often?
A lot. They do
Stop
a lot of trade
it!
with Africa, so there's a lot more
What?
than people assume. Yes.
So you were around Black people in Japan? Now that is, I've never been. So yes, I'm ignorant. I don't know. I did not expect that response. Wow.
Yes. Now, of course, there's a couple of little caveats to that, but there's a lot more, and they do a lot of heavy trading with Africa. They actually, the only base that they have outside of their country is in Africa, and military base, and they actually utilize Africa as a huge place to pull immigrants because they have a low birth rate, which most places now are having low birth rates, and so they really need people to do work and have babies and have communities. And many folks, particularly from mainly Western, there's some Eastern African countries, go over and intermarry, have children, do business, have family.
They have Black Japanese people.
Oh yeah, now if you know anything about the U.S. military, that's always the running joke. That your uncle came back from a war, but he had a whole family over there in Asia. So yeah.
Here, so I did get an opportunity to see some of that.
Yeah, and then and the perfect example of seeing that, seeing what they call Black Asians is oh my God, the tennis girl who just had a baby, who broke.
Was it Serena?
No. Naomi Osaka.
That was
her. Perfect example. She's Haitian and Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and was raised in the U.S. But yeah. So Japanese culture is a lot around saving face. There's other parts of what saving face is, but in many ways, saving face is the same thing. Code switching. I recognize who is in control of the system, but I also recognize how I need to be in order to maybe save myself, protect myself, things of that nature. So in rooms, when I'm working with clients around reclaiming their power, I do talk about code switching because safety is important. If we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, even though it's very problematic and his research had a lot of things to be back for, after we get some food and some air and some shelter, we need to feel safe before we can get some love. And that safety is a linchpin for so many things in life. And I want you to be safe because I also recognize for many people, they will talk about their struggles to even live in this world, as they're constantly oppressed by systems that want to challenge their language, the way that they can work, the way that they wear their hair, how they dress, where they can live, and they need to feel safe. So sometimes it is. We got a code switch. Even biblical references exist of that. In the Quran, in the Bible, even Confucius talk about we got to shift. Even Buddha talk we got to shift. We just got to shift and adapt to the environment that we're in order to be who we need and live to be. So code switching is literally how I help people balance. But I also recognize that can be very exhausting.
Thank you.
That can be so exhausting.
You're talking about it from a clinical perspective because we get it. But we have a lot of people who are listening. This is their first time. They know what code switching is, but it's their first time hearing it in this context. So I want to sit with the space too of how unfair it is, because it's not right. There are people who don't have to code switch. They're the ones.
Correct.
They're the ones that are making the rules. They're the ones, and we have to do it. And yes, it becomes a burden. And yes, we want to just say, excuse me, what the hell with it, and it's not fair and it's hard to teach. I have 2 little children, and I have to teach my daughter already at 8 years old that yes, your instinct is telling you this. Yes, your gut is telling you this. Yes, you know this to be true, but there are certain settings, there's certain situations, there's certain places that you just don't have to be quiet, okay? So that, you can live, and so that you can survive and get through this. Can we honor that for a minute? Just that space of just how unfreaking fair and exhausting, as you say, that is.
Beyond it being exhausting, it, as my husband will say, is only so much beat down I can take. what my business partner and brother often say in our podcast, there's no more cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more cheeks to turn.
Yeah.
I can't turn
Turn
left.
the other cheek. How many I
There's
got?
no cheeks. Yeah, there's no more cheeks at all.
Yeah.
But that's the other part of coming into a room, to have that space to honor that I'm tired. I'm tired of having to straighten my hair. I'm tired of having to use these eloquent words. I'm tired, as that viral video went for the young lady at the medical office, where her white co-worker wanted her to hang out with her, and she was just, not saying that I don't think you're not a nice person. That's just not what I do. That's my boundary. I come to work, I be friendly, and I leave. And the fact that her employer couldn't support her in that, and that's the same thing. Like, why do I need a front for you? But apparently these systems require a lot of masking. So yes, the room can be the safe place to take off the wig, like Annalise did, take off that wig, the fake eyelashes, the makeup, and just breathe. And then also go on your rant about how unfair it is. But then also what I challenge people is, you do recognize, even in these systems, you can be in communities where you don't have to exist like that.
Absolutely.
And empower people to know that you can create those communities, and those communities have existed for thousands of years, where they have said, hey, we'll deal with you when we have to, or if we want to. But if I choose my majority life to be with those who are welcoming and loving and spiritually divine with me, then that's who I'm going to be. That's what communes were. That's what communes are. That's what insular communities are. And many cultures are insular communities. And that's something I've invited more and more people from the continent who happen to live in America to say, hey, that's okay if you choose to do that. No one said that was wrong. That's a good safety measure.
Where were you 10 years ago when I was starting my career and getting into this really good? Because I didn't have permission. I didn't know that I did it. There is no way in the world, as creative and artistic and talented I am, that I should have ever run a government-funded program, a U.S. government-funded. I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? But I didn't know what you just said. I did not know that it was okay for me to create my own room. And I believe, if I'm honest, it was fear. Because in my gut, I knew something wasn't right. Again, my gut was telling me, you just the government? like, hell, you sound right. But I guess it was the fear. What will people say about me? What will people think about me? What if I fail? What if I succeed? How can we talk to us? Like, how can we? Because I'm new at rediscovering this. This is why I'm putting the podcast. It's still moving. Yes. How do we get to a place where we can embrace that?
Fear is such a powerful and yet motivating emotion. Fear is the reason why oppressive systems exist. But I tell folks, I encourage folks, fear can be molded. It can be the energy that turns you into power, that gives you superpowers. You can be an alchemist. It does not require you to succumb. I'm not telling folks don't not acknowledge fear. You need to sit in that. What does it tell you? Who's the voice? What's the cadence? What's the rhythm? What's the message that they keep on challenging? And like they say, like the head is being motivated. So then how am I I just want to help you take that fear, hold on to it, externalize it, hold on to it, and now it's you hold the fear. And then is it your Thor's hammer? Is it your mic? Is it going to be your energy drink? Is it going to be a new wig for the day? You can control it. It can be something for you, for you. But fear also means that we need to acknowledge if you're constantly being oppressed, that's what kept you keeping oppressed, and that's how many of us who look like us from the continent in America, we still operate that. I can't not acknowledge that we still operate in places because we see that the summer 2020 showed us this. January 6th showed us this. The things that happened to Sandra Bland showed us this. The constant TikTok videos of people experiencing Karens show us this. That there's a thing about our safety. And so we literally can change. Just because, hey, I just want to keep safe, keep my head down, I just want to get my bills paid, I want to make sure my family's good. That's with this, and that's okay. I'm never going to knock someone that happens. But what I am going to tell you is, I want you to look outside your window, and I bet you your neighbor is thinking the same thing. You two could become the community of support. You could become the community of, hey, we're going to want to be safe with each other and comfort with each other, so therefore we ain't got to do all this code switching. And then you can add another neighbor, and there could be several co-workers, and there could be other family members, and that could be blood or non-blood, whoever you identify as family. And next thing you know, you can have a community.
Yes, she can. But I think in our roots, in our culture, we're so family oriented that sometimes we confuse family for community. And so we think we got to do what mama say, or daddy say, or cousin Johnny say, or Uncle Louis say, or Uncle Tyrone, whatever. What the and these are the people that are actually reinstilling that fear in us.
Sure.
And we're feeling like we're scared to jump out and create our own community or meet our own community because we might make our cousin mad. Our success and our ability to break the norm, that might offend people.
God, that's a whole
and I don't want
show.
you to be mad at me.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show that we got to talk about. So this makes me think of Nidra Tawwab's book on
it's such a smart
unhealthy, but and I recommend that to people a lot. But then I say, I want you to recognize you are going to be talking language that most of those people aren't going to really understand because there's some generational stuff going on.
Yeah,
there's a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of things that we got to take in perspective for the time of why things had to happen or people felt compelled to do what they did or be the way that they are or whatever. And you have to acknowledge those things. But then the other part is you do need to recognize, because I remember my therapist telling me, people will keep you where you are because it meets their needs.
Absolutely. Not mine.
So
me, yeah.
Inherent in change, people have to adapt to you when you change. They're just not gonna like it. And now you gotta decide if you want to deal with that static. I ask my clients that all the time, do you want to deal with the static? Because if you want to deal with the static, you have some options. You have some options.
One thing that has kicked me in the pants in a good way in terms of motivating me to do just what you're saying, and I think it's useful to share, is the only thing scarier than going is not. Because I don't want to be on my deathbed thinking of all the opportunities, all the thoughts. I feel like if God put it in my head, it's for a reason. You know what I'm saying? If he made me sensitive to it and connected to it, it's important. And if I allow fear to prevent me from going there, then I run the risk. And that's another thing. Stuff happens to everybody. You know what I'm saying? So maybe you won't jump out there and go to prison or get yourself in a really crazy situation. Maybe that won't happen, although it could, but something's going to happen. Something happens to everybody. So why stay safe because you're afraid to jump out there and get into something when you don't get into something anyway? Something bad will happen to you whether you take a chance or a risk or not. So just do it.
So then, to bring it in a complete circle, that risk still requires you to have some place, something, some system of safety. So where do we get that? And then that's, again, I know I stress the community because I'm big about this village part, but who is that? And then the fact that you can dictate that. You can create that, you can dictate that. That also means you do need to take the risk and vulnerability to be seeking it. I mean, this happens in relationships. Why people continue to struggle in relationships. Where the Surgeon General said the biggest crisis we have besides mental health is people are lonely. People aren't connecting. People feel like that I don't know if I can trust people, or people always have to get me or something. And I'm not negating. You're right. They're right. I can understand your experience, but that does require a level of risk to even get up the courage to say hi to somebody and say, hey, how you doing? Or, because you see this with kids. It's the simplest thing they do. They'll be like, hey, my name is such and such. My favorite color is red. What's yours? Mm-hmm. That's a level of risk that they just took.
Yeah. And sometimes they're mean. And so they say get rejected, but they survive it. Mm-hmm. When do we get that point? We get scared. Well, I want to compliment what you're saying, because it's with the children example, they go out, they do silly stuff all the time, make a fool of themselves, get whatever, and then, but they keep doing it. But then where does it turn where then they get scared to do it? Because we as adults, like you said, we're so shy, we're so scared, we're so afraid of the rejection, we ain't even gonna try.
Because of that emotion that we don't want to feel anymore. Because we want to save face. Because we want to sit there, because we got to survive. All those things. And interesting enough, a lot of stuff that you're bringing up is also, we can have another whole show on attachment stuff. Another whole conversation around also. People need to really clarify what friends are, because people continue to say, I feel like it's hard to make friends, and maybe I always ask people, well, what is your definition of a friend? And then in many ways, it's a society, particularly Western society, friendship is becoming so transactional. Mm-hmm. We forget that friendship could literally be, hey, my name is such and such, your favorite color is red? Well, my favorite color is blue. Well, that's interesting. Why do you like blue? Versus, so what you gonna do for me?
Absolutely.
How you gonna make me look good?
Absolutely.
That part.
The issue isn't it's really hard making friends. It's because you don't really understand what a friend is. Because a real friend shouldn't be that hard to make, because they gonna naturally want to be a part of your community.
Correct. And then, but you also recognize as human beings, we're gonna go through journeys together. We're gonna ebb and flow. We all evolve. We all change. So there may be times that we are going to have a potential conflict, or we're going to have a struggle, or we're going to have a loss. And then we can work through that if we choose to work through that. Interesting enough, in other cultural communities, when they're so communicative, you have the community. Even if you're that dot, you have this large community that are also going through that loss and that vulnerability and all of these other things together. And in many ways, that's something we can, again, pull when you're looking for support in all these places that are kind of bothering you about your identity, and you want to use Western therapy to help make sense of stuff, but you don't want to lose your cultural thing. That's a part of the cultural thing. I get why you don't want to lose, because you have this thought process of, my community don't want me to fail. Right. My community wants me to be great. So who in my community are my elders that I can pull into? Mm-hmm. As I'm also educating them on, hey, did you recognize that boundaries are important? So I'm not saying that I'm disrespecting you when I say, hey, maybe not right now, I don't want to have that conversation. Or, hey, I'm not sure if you need to know everything about what's going on in my marriage right now. That's not disrespect. It's just we need to put up a little door. And we need to have a little bit of clarity on when that door can open up. And in a lot of communal cultures, a lot of places that are so intergenerational connected, that's a struggle that they talk about. That's the reason why they become the Western medicine. Because they literally like, look, I don't need everybody to know my business. Sometimes I don't need mama and daddy and everybody to know what's going on with me. Or I feel the pressure, I gotta be excellent. And maybe I don't want to be the doctor, the lawyer, or the accountant. Maybe I just want to be an artist. And they sitting here like, well, how you gonna feed me? I didn't realize I signed up to feed you. Those parts. So that's what I'm speaking on today, is just we, as melanated folks from the continent, we gave birth to this world. And we gave a lot of foundational ideas for a lot of things. And one of those things was foundation of understanding the mind, the connection, the emotions, and how that all relates. We are all connected in that way. It just happened that it got bastardized when we went on up to Europe, and then they went and got scientific with it, and
Like
they went
you,
and
like you
explored a little
talked
bit.
about the safety piece, that was safe. Like
Yeah,
if you were talking in your native African dialect during slavery, that can get you killed.
exactly,
So we had
exactly.
to learn how to adopt this. Yeah.
Correct. And so then we have these ideas and thoughts and whatnot. And many of these places, so also in 2020, 2021, and 2022, many of these same Western communities also decided to do some atonements because they recognized also for those thoughts to be into scientific place, you were doing some brutal experimentation to other cultures and other communities that first of all, didn't even have to happen to prove anything. So let's start with that one.
Facts.
And two, and two, you recognize that in many ways, those people, if you just sat there and had a conversation, they could have sat there and wrote the book for you, let alone tell you everything you need to know. But they do, and we're still doing those atonements now. And I feel like we're in this great space because there's such a need to really teach, educate, mold, train, mentor healers and therapists throughout the world to ensure that people have safe spaces and let them also define what the safe space is. It doesn't always have to be a therapy room. The safe space could be the village community circle. It could be a restitution community discussion. It could be the barbershop. It could be when we're down there at the market, sitting exchanging goods and finding out the wares of the day, and someone lost somebody. How can we community support them? But we just need to help people know that there are people in the community that have the skill sets and the curiosity and the training and the awareness and the desire to be that center point to help you.
If this is like, I feel like it's a spoken word. And I want to thank you because I feel like now that I'm not practicing, I have more flexibility to be authentic and really, really speak because I don't have a license to protect. And I do get the sense that a lot, not all of them, but a handful of therapists come up here and you can tell that they're guarded. They're just playing it safe. Let me just give the clinical, whatever. Let me just say, I don't want to push it too far, and I respect that because we need you to keep your license so that you can continue to make this impact. But I thank you for being honest and I thank you for being authentic because there is an element of just as long as you have somebody over you, you're just going to have, especially us, because we don't have the power, we're going to have to just, I love the code switching word, just run that thin line. And what you're saying is just speaking to that so much because people won't even go there. People won't even entertain the thought of talking about the possibility that everything they saying and everything they doing and everything they preaching ain't quite what they genuinely feeling, but feeling obligated to say it and do it for the sake of, keeping what they hit so hard for, rightfully so. But I'm just glad you're giving me a voice.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity. We're gonna be back. We're gonna be talking about.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do this again.
A multitude of stuff. One thing I will, really press upon folks: do not perceive that when you are seeking a therapist, that there's not a therapist to find. We recognize that the system has made it difficult, on a mirage of reasons, made it difficult to find someone. What I encourage folks to do always is the internet is your friend in many ways, that you have all these directories and resources and you have groups.
In fact,
yes, go ahead, plug it.
Yes, Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters.
There you go, plug it. Like we have all these directories, but ironically, your friends, and that's one thing we appreciate with the younger generation, y'all don't mind telling people you're going to therapy. So your friends will say, I got a therapist, or she got a therapist, hey, this there, hey, or I'm at the barbershop and they were talking about blah, 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 blah. TikTok shows and teaches you, hey, I went to a therapist and this was my experience. I appreciated it. Try this therapist out. Or, hey, this is how I found a therapist. Maybe you want to try that. But the other thing I tell folks is, if you go into the doctor, they are obligated to find you a therapist.
Absolutely.
Because they are required to screen to ensure that your needs are being met. If you're telling it that you're stressed out, I'm having postpartum, I'm not eating well, I'm constantly anxious, I don't know if I can handle it, I think I may be sitting here hearing someone who passed away 5 years ago, they are obligated to sit there and be like, we need to find you someone to talk to. Your insurance company, if you are fortunate enough to have insurance, they are obligated to find you a therapist. That's what you're paying for. So they need to be on the phone finding you somebody with an open appointment and giving you an appointment and date and time to show up and then sit there and pay for the service. So also make these systems work for you. So do not be afraid. And you are always welcome to go to movetowardchange.com.
Love it.
Send me a message. I will find it. If I'm not the person for you, I tell people I'm gonna find you the next best option. Listen, I'll use my network and help
California, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, and Hawaii.
Yes, and I also serve international clients.
International clients.
Yes, I do. I do have some folks in some other places that I serve that are military affiliated or U.S. expats, and I do the work to ensure that I'm making sure I follow through with the systems to get them care, but also plug them to the communities of care, because the communities have resources too, and I don't want people to shy away from the fact that they are in a rich community and the community wants them there. So let's make sure the community sees you there.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're being shy, so I'm gonna just put you out there. She's also an LGBTQIA affirming provider, and she does the alternative kink affirming providing services.
Yes, I do. So because I also do sex therapy and intimacy, and I do talk a lot about the various ways of loving. Again, something that we have brought into the world and let people know, and then another group of people felt like that was wrong. I'm like, no, and I've lived and visited many countries. Love is love. Being connected with people is being connected. You determine what that is for those relationships. And we can sit there, because many times we need to make a safe space to make sense of all that. When we're curious, when we want to see how it feels to be with other people. So
I'm definitely going to have you come back, because I'm a Christian, but I believe in everything you're just saying. And there's such a space for that as well. And I don't think anybody is really talking about that. Like, one of the things that the Bible says is be fruitful and multiply. So how are we going to be fruitful and multiply when we don't even know how to talk about sex? And we don't feel comfortable and, free to enjoy a happy, healthy sex life. I'm like, you all just don't understand what that means. So yeah. I'm glad we've got you to speak on that.
Of course. I can't think of I follow her on, I'm so bad with names, but she just wrote a really great book talking about this. I want to say her name is Candace something, and she had just released a book last year that really talked about that contradictory message, particularly for women and women of color receive within Christian faith around intimacy, sexuality, and pleasure and desire. And it's interesting because I do have these people will bring that in the room, and I'm like, hey, let's explore, let's be curious. And I love having these where people be like, the Bible really is very contradictory. And I'm like, you have to recognize it was written in the time of the person who wrote the book. Because of the version, you do recognize that many things cannot be translated into the language of what you're trying to read, and then also that a group of people determine which books could be in it. So there's a lot of little politics in what you're reading.
I agree with that.
And it's interesting because the person who your faith is based on didn't write not a darn thing.
Not one of them. Not one. The book of Jesus.
Yeah. That person, just like Muhammad and Confucius and Buddha and David, was about living a life and living your divine purpose. So that may be a question.
That's
to talk about.
Yeah. Love it.
So, but yeah. Well, of course. I have many folks I'm gonna refer, and we're gonna get this going because we need to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
Because people are wanting help, and we're here to serve you. But recognize, if it's not us, we're gonna get you to the next place. The village will not fail you.
There we go. Speaking of the village, and I know we don't have a time to unpack this, but I just want to see what comes to your mind off the top of your brain. What about finances? Because, let's just talk about it. Like, if you are in a space where you can't even get out of your mama's house, okay, how do you even go about, even if you find a village outside of her house, you still got to go home and listen to her, and she's not really a part of your village and your community, you're going to be influenced. So what are some ways, I think that we're taught as Black people, as mental health providers, that money is not going to be helpful, like that money is a bad thing, or you don't want to make too much money, then you're wealthy, or you're selfish, or you're spoiled. And having gone through what I've gone through, I have a very hard aversion to that. But what is the benefit and the value of finding ways to create so that we can have resources, so that we can get out? Because the fact of the matter is, we're not in our own communities because a lot of times we can't get there. We can't create them. We don't know how to access them. You're talking about leaving the country. I mean, I think it's great, an idea, but was it free for you to get to Japan? You know what I mean? Oh, it was free for you? Okay, well, I got that.
Yeah, so part of it is also maximizing. So I'm big, I teach my nephews this, and my younger cousins this all the time, because I grew up with parents who, particularly my grandmother and my dad, they're closer in generational age because my dad's a little older. And you utilize your network. Who knows who to get you where you want to go. And that's how I got that freedom.
Good, love it.
Getting a job that sit there and sit me somewhere.
Right.
So that's that part.
But money got you there, even though if it didn't come from your pocket.
And
correct. That's what I'm talking about, being resourceful too, knowing how to assess the funds, because it doesn't come from out of our pockets.
Correct. Yeah. And I will say, and I think we need, and I hope you do more podcasts, because that's a conversation I constantly have with clients, is around our relationship with money, the historical systems that limit access to money because of who and how you are, and then also being financially literate. Because you need to understand in capitalist society, you have to have a poverty class. That's the only way capitalism works.
It's gonna work.
Yeah, and if you understand those fundamentals, then in many ways then that taps into your mind of resources. Now, one thing I will say is, I also have some probably challenging viewpoints for people on money. Because if you're going to tell me you are struggling to get this, but you got an iPhone 15 that's a rent payment, then I might have a conversation with you, unless you sit there and know how to do some stuff that drops off of a box, a truck. Right. If you sit here run around with the latest and greatest of clothing, then I'm gonna sit there and I'm probably gonna challenge you in the room around what are your priorities? Because if priorities for you is looking well, then I want you to recognize that looking well could be another safety mechanism. That could be your warrior paint. I totally get that. But then I need you to understand, how is that going to help you get to the other stuff? Mm-hmm. Because like my girl Jasmine Sullivan said in mascara, I put my mascara and my lipstick on, and it gets me to the countries I can't pronounce. And that's what you're doing. Then own it. Own it. But make sure you make it work for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Love it. I love that you mentioned consumerism. We are some of the highest. We make the least amount of money and spend the most. Let me just. I'm just like, good Lord, you see some of the nicest cars in the projects. Okay, let me stop.
Okay, we'll be back on it. We got many things to discuss. Thank you so much, Connie. I really appreciate this opportunity.
This has been such a pleasure. You just are so wise. So again, I want to reemphasize that website is movetowardchange.com. She's located in North Carolina, California, Florida, Texas, and Hawaii, and internationally. Do you do any coaching? You don't do coaching?
I am not open to my sex coaching business as of yet, but I am expanding my practice, so I will be having more therapists starting January of 2024. Awesome. And then I help healthcare providers sit there and literally, I call it private practice garden. We're going to help you plant, grow, and prune your private practice so you can sit there and be a community for communities. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And again, to reemphasize, she does military, kink, and LGBTQIA services as well. Thank you so much for your time. Again, you have a lot to offer, and I just know that our audience has been blessed. I've been blessed by having you here today. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, of course. We'll have multiple rounds. Y'all be
Yes,
seeing me
we'll do this
again.
again. All
Thank you
right.
so much, Connie.
You are so welcome. All right, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Peace and blessings, Dr. O.